I jumped on a little.
It is a delight to welcome Daniela Revelli on this podcast. She is
That's
a
right.
tattoo artist and a musician living in Spain. How are you today, Daniela? Thank you for joining the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Mhm. Right. So, you're the first tattoo artist I've conversed with in my life, not just the first to appear on this show. So,
Okay.
tell me about that profession.
Um, it's a lot of fun. It's a really good way to be creative, and I found that even through music and art, like I do art, like my room is full of my paintings and stuff. It's one of the ways where you can be creative and genuinely make money from it very easily because it's so popular nowadays. So it's a great situation to be honest. So it's like it's great that you can express yourself and you can mark people forever. And on top of that, that it's so profitable nowadays, it really is a bit of a unicorn profession for a creative. Because for music, you got to work so hard unless you're signed, unless someone's really putting a lot of money behind you. It's hard to really be out there and actually be making good money. But tattooing, man, I lived in Australia for almost 3 years, and I was
Mhm.
tattooing, and I was living well. And Australia is expensive, so it's really great to be a creative and be able to do that. On top of that, just a little side note about tattooing. I used to do these prophetic tattoos in Australia, which were amazing. So people would just tell me where they would want the tattoo, and more or less, I would ask them how big, more or less, they wanted the tattoo. And then I would pray on it, and I would spend some time thinking about them and thinking about what could suit them, what suited their heart, and just the overall personhood. And I would come up with something and they wouldn't see the tattoo until the tattoo was done. It's not
Mm.
like they would see the tattoo and then I'd see it. Do you like it? We can do it. It was they didn't actually see the tattoo until the tattoo was completely finished. And I enjoyed doing those probably the most.
Hmm. I see. Well, I'm not really a person who likes tattoos very much, but I do like to converse with people who have them. I think most of them have personalities that I find appealing, like their traits of their personality, which I find appealing, and I guess yours is no exception. So, is it a
Yeah.
requirement for a tattoo artist to have tattoo on themselves too?
Sorry, what was that?
Oh, is it necessary for a tattoo artist to have tattoos on themselves?
I don't think so. I don't think it's necessary, but I think, you know, it's the same thing as asking a producer, can you produce music without listening to music or liking music? It's like, well, you can technically if you know the steps, and you can, but I think it makes a lot more sense when you're involved in the world of to have whatever it is that you're providing.
Mhm. Have you ever had the instance where a guy or a girl tattoos their current like romantic partner on them and then they break up
Yes,
and
I
then
have. And when that happened and I tattooed the first one and then it didn't work out, that was the last name I've ever done.
Mhm.
There's certain things that I are non-negotiables for me. There's things that I won't do. Like for example, tattooing snakes, tattooing any type of you know, obviously swastikas, or
Yeah.
upside down stars, like any satanic symbolism. I don't go there at all. I'm like, you know what? It's fair. You can go to a different artist that's be happy to do that. I don't do that. Also, other things that I don't do, for example, are tribal work, but not necessarily for any particular reason other than the fact that I'm not Maori and I'm not from any tribe that I feel in the position to be able to give that to people. And another really important reason why I don't do it is because I feel like a lot of the time people that want like tribal work is, they're working out, they're starting to get a little bit buff, and they just want to show off their muscles and have something on them, but it doesn't mean anything to them. So I feel like that is not something I ever wanted to do. And that's probably the easiest tattoo to do. And that's probably where you can make the most amount of money. But that's just never been the reason I tattoo. I tattoo because I love the art. I am an artist in every sense. Like I'm a fine arts artist. I paint, I draw, I love to sing, and I play instruments. But when it comes to doing something for no reason or for it to have no sense, and being then that's really a non-negotiable for me. So these are a couple of the things that I don't tattoo, for example, but I do tattoo things with meaning. I do tattoo things on people and it marks them forever. And I think that that's beautiful, to be able to have such an impact. Like I traveled to Australia like 3 years after I left, and I kept finding people that I had tattooed, and I had completely forgot, because obviously I was tattooing so many people, I completely forgotten. But it's like these people will never forget me because I was the one that gave them perhaps their first tattoo or their second tattoo or whatever. And then they would come and say, "You did this," and I would be like, "Wow, I did that. That's really good." Like, but it's beautiful to be able to mark people, and it's also nice to have boundaries within what it is that you're doing and not just doing it for money only.
Yeah, I understand. And I guess those who are looking by video, I guess the tattoos that I can see are really cool. Oh,
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I got this one. That one says Jesus. I did that one with my left hand, and I'm not a lefty
oh
at
wow.
all whatsoever. So it doesn't look very good. But these I did with my right hand. So I
Mhm.
did these on myself. That's a little gypsy girl, and then that's a he rose from the grave.
Mm-hmm.
That's a rose, and then that's a little bird
Um,
that flies. I open my hands.
mhm.
That says God's, and then I have like a mandala on my hand, as to always be able to bring something to the table or whatnot. Um, I was actually gonna say something else and I completely forgot, but I was gonna say, to me, the art of tattooing, which I really wanted to say, is I decorate canvases all over. Like that's a canvas, and I have so many other canvases around my room. And I feel like the body is just a canvas, and we're not going to take it anywhere. You know, we're dust, and we will go back to the dust.
Mhm.
And I believe that it is beautiful to decorate them. And I think a lot of cultures before our culture have discovered how beautiful it is to decorate, whether it's with different ways. And of course, some people do it for ritual purposes, and that I don't really vibe with. But in regards to art and decoration, I'm all for it. So I love it.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm quite fascinated by, I guess, most visual artists in general, despite me not being very good at visual arts. And tattoo artists are quite
Right.
interesting because you guys believe that the human skin itself is the canvas in which you do your magic on.
Yeah, yeah. And the fact is, you can chuck a canvas. You can destroy it, you can cut it up, but it's like what you tattoo on a person will like remain forever. And it almost
Yeah.
becomes, because it's such a traumatic event for the skin, for your dermis, and just for your body in general. Um, you will always remember like the circumstance in which you were being tattooed. So it's almost like your tattoos almost become like a story, like a storyline of your life. And you remember, and I remember exactly that when I was getting this girl done, had just gotten married. I was in Granada, traveling over to Madrid. I was about to live there. When I got this one, I was in Buenos Aires. I had just gotten there. We were gonna record songs and for this artist guy, and we were living in like a house full of musicians, and it was beautiful. Just like it just becomes storylines because you remember everything. Any traumatic event causes us to kind of be hyper aware. So I feel like it's very meaningful throughout the years if you commit to a path of maybe decorating the canvas. And it's beautiful to have stories, to tell.
Hmm. Yeah, and of course you are a very well-traveled person. You went from Australia to Spain, and you've mentioned a few travel spots in
Yeah,
between. So
yeah.
yeah, I must admit that I'm not a well-traveled person, despite the fact that I'm currently not in the country of my birth. Uh, but I like to travel in like a moderate amount, but I don't have what they call wanderlust. So tell me about that.
What do you mean?
Wanderlust. It's a word that says it's a word that I guess signifies love of travel. I guess.
Oh, okay. Wow. I've just learned this word today, and I feel like I do completely have it. So, you learn something new every day. Well, I don't know that it's that I love to travel. I think it's more so that I met life in that way.
Mhm.
I feel like anything that's familiar to us, like you can see it in people, even when they're in toxic relationships, when they've had a lot of distortionate dynamics within their family home, and their childhood and their upbringing and whatnot, that becomes familiar to them. And then they end up looking for a partner that's just as dysfunctional as their original family was, and as as their parents were. And then their partners become sort of like a figure of like their parents or their caretakers. It's kind of a journey to fix it. And I feel like with traveling, it's the same. It's almost like it becomes familiar, and not in the toxicity or negative aspect of it, but just in the familiar aspect of it. I mean, I was young. The first time I traveled out of my country, which is Argentina, I was born there, was when I was about 7 or 8, and we moved to the States. So I was raised in the States, and I did middle school and beginning of high school in the States. And then my parents were called to Gibraltar, which is an English colony south of Spain. And I did school in Spain, but the church was always in Gibraltar because he planted a church and whatnot. So I was between Gibraltar and Spain for my entire high school years. And then when I finished high school, I went back to Argentina, to the city where I was born. And this is where I studied some graphic design, and I did a couple of things. I was working in a photography studio. And then I moved back to Jib for a couple of months and moved over to Madrid for a year. Then I moved back to Buenos Aires. I mean, when I was in Madrid, we did a little bit of Portugal, a little bit of Barcelona, went back to Buenos Aires, then came back for a couple of months and moved over to Bristol. So I was in the UK for about 2.5 years. And after that, I came here for a couple of months to settle again, and then moved to Australia for three and 3 years almost. And then I moved back, and then I kind of been traveling. I'm going to Bali in a month. But it probably, I feel like none of my travels were wanderlust, if that's a word that I've just learned and can use. I don't feel like that was that at all. I feel like my movings were more a familiarity to get up and go, a
Mhm.
familiarity to when something feels a little stagnant, just to have the routine and the mindset to just get up and just take everything and just go to a new place. And I never went traveling for like a couple of weeks here, a couple of weeks there. I went traveling for years, like 2 years there and then 2 years there, and I made a community, and I learned the ways, and I learned the culture. And I think that that's beautiful. And I feel like that's the way that I like to travel. I would have never said that I just traveled just to go. I mean, I've been all over, and I've been in many other places, but overall, most of my travelings have entailed um, being, getting to know, becoming a part of, and always being the new one, which is I guess the negative connotation of the familiarity of traveling. It's always being the new one, always having something to learn, and always having something to teach to the people that are around you. And that dynamic was very familiar to me. And so I think that I dragged it on for quite a while. And I feel like it's only in the last maybe 3 years where I can say confidently that I feel comfortable being in one place, and I am not having any urge to get up and go. Like I feel like everything that I need is here, and this is as good a place as any to settle. My nephew's here, my brother's here, my parents are here, the church is here. I feel like my people are here, my community, my sister-in-law, which used to be my best friend before she married my brother. So I'm just feeling excited for this new part of my life where I actually don't want to move. And now that I don't want to move, I'm traveling a lot like other people travel. Like as in like I'm going a couple weeks there, I'm going a couple weeks to Madrid before that. Like, but I'm just traveling like little bits. And I love that for me.
Well, I think by the time this show comes out, you will have traveled to Bali and then returned. So, but
Probably.
for now, enjoy your trip to Bali. I haven't had a
Thank
chance
you.
to visit, but my brother has, and he enjoyed it.
Yeah. Well, if you have any recommendations, by all means, before I actually go, I wouldn't mind.
Okay, I'll ask my brother. So,
Yeah, for sure.
but obviously the beaches.
I know I'm going to the beaches. I'm going to Nusa Penida. I'm going to some of the temples. I We've already arranged like a couple of things with one of my friends that's already there, but I'm not 100% sure what we're gonna do later on. We want to go to the Gillies, maybe. I think that's what they're called. There's some islands, the Gili Islands. So I think we may go to those as well. to like do snorkeling and all these fun things.
Oh,
So I'm looking forward to it, to be honest. First
mhm,
time I actually traveled like that, which is weird.
mhm. Yeah. So I'm not really much of a beach person for two reasons. One is the sand, like in that Star Wars movie with Anakin Skywalker complaining about the
It
sand.
does really get everywhere, hey?
It does get everywhere. And secondly, I guess I'm not the kind of person who is comfortable showing a lot of skin, so to speak, and I believe that's kind of
Okay.
like the norm for many people. But I
Yeah.
guess if I'm if I'm invited by friends and stuff and who are I guess not into like shaming people for their bodies, and sure,
Well, I mean, if you do have groups of friends that do shame you for your body, then I feel like those are not your friends,
yeah.
first of all. So if you have a group of friends, let's just establish that you can be yourself and they won't shame you, because otherwise they're not really your friends.
Mhm, of course. And I look forward to going to the beaches in Bali too. Um,
Yeah.
so so to segue into our main topic, of course, if you know the Bible as much as I do, you know that traveling is a big theme in that one. From Abraham being told by God to leave
Mhm.
his home for 70 or so years to establish a new promised land, to, of course,
Yeah.
Moses leading people out of Egypt, and Christ traveling across Judea and to Jerusalem. And
Yeah.
of course, after his crucifixion, death, and return, his disciples, the 11 of them, traveled everywhere to spread the good news.
Yeah. The diaspora. Yeah, absolutely. And they were called to travel even more, to take
Hmm.
it to all corners of the earth. So I feel like that's great. I mean, one of my dreams in regards to travel, which hasn't come to pass just yet, but I feel like it will at some point, was really just to grab a van and, have a mini house in the van and just be able to travel and make community groups of people that would um, create family away from family and disciple people and stay with them for months at a time and then travel again and then come back at some other point. That's one of my big, big dreams. This has not come to pass yet, but I feel like I'm working toward it.
Hmm.
So just got some land south of Spain and just looking forward to starting to plant my own things and, um, getting the van to get there and come back in an easier manner, and even to be able to sleep over there with the van parked until there's something built there for us to sleep in and shelter ourselves in. But that is definitely a big dream of mine, to travel with a little bit more purpose than just getting to know the earth. But I think getting to know the earth is already in itself a huge purpose. um, to know that we are on this planet that God made, and that all of the creation screams out of the glory and the goodness of God and the majesty that is his power in creating all of it, and to be able to experience it. I mean, I've never climbed, the Everest or like seen the world from the Himalayas or whatever, but I assume that that can only be glorious to behold in nature. And so I feel like to be able to explore creation, it's just to be able to have one more reason to give praise where praise is due. And I think that that's beautiful. Obviously, if that becomes your sole purpose and you get lost in just, the clouds of it, if you will, I think that that can turn out to not be super beneficial. But overall, yeah, traveling is um, by all means biblical.
Hmm. Yeah, so a bit of backstory. I met you through our mutual friend,
Yes.
Melody, Rachel. As of today, I just uploaded the episode with her, and I'll send it to you after we are done with this. And I listened to her podcast episode with you, and I thought, yeah, both of yourselves have a very interesting relationship with Jesus,
Mm-hmm.
and I would like to hear from from her as well as you, but I heard from her already. So
Mm-hmm.
now my question to you is who um who is Jesus to you?
Mm. Well, that's probably, a big question with a big answer, but it can also be as simple as everything, you know? It's what is air to a human, or what is water to a fish? Like,
Mhm.
I feel like he's the master, he's the friend, he is the savior, he's the redeemer, he is the all in all incarnate person of God that we can know personally, and he's the one that opens the way so that we can arrive higher frequencies for people to understand, or higher dimensions, or higher um, situations. He is the way.
Mhm.
I'd say he's the way
Mhm.
in its broadest essence, because um, I think a lot of people like to think of themselves as Christians, or identify as Christians, and I am okay with that. Like, if someone says I'm a Christian, I am a Christian, but I like to think that I am a Jesus follower.
Mhm.
Because there's a lot of Christians that are not following Jesus. So I like to think that Jesus is the way for
Mhm.
me.
Of course, and according to the book of John, he is also the truth and the life. So,
Yeah.
um, your point about people who call themselves Christians who are not, I guess, followers of Jesus, which I call disciples. So,
Mhm.
there's a
Yeah.
there's a great book by this uh, awe-inspiring man named Dietrich Bonhoeffer, called The Cost of Discipleship. And so a bit of background about who he was. He's I believe, a Protestant uh, priest, and he lived in Germany during the time of Nazi ascension and rule. And
Right.
he, while everyone is either hunkered down or fled the country, he stayed behind, and he was relentless in his resistance to Hitler.
Right.
And he was he was caught by the regime along with a bunch of people because they were conspiring to assassinate Adolf himself, and he was martyred. So he was a remarkable man. And
Um,
so I guess the idea of discipleship, I believe, is in that part of the gospel where he says, Jesus says, those who follow me must renounce everything you have. And then this rich fellow who comes to him, and he was like tremendously disappointed. But
the rich young ruler. Yeah.
mhm. but I think that's what discipleship is, and very few people can truly attain them, even though we should all strive to attain them.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Because it's not easy, you know. It's not easy because you have to constantly be looking to have an even if type of faith, you know. It's I'm gonna do this whether the blessing comes or not, and then that's not easy because we're all trying to get something of God, and it's not because there aren't benefits to who he is or that what he can do to us, because the psalmist said, bless the Lord, oh my soul, and don't forget any of his benefits. So it's like we are called to a life that remembers the benefits that there are in God, but also not to follow him because of the benefits. There are benefits and they are there for sure, but it's hard to in a fallen world follow a good God, even though circumstances sometimes want to deceive us to the goodness of God. And that's hard, and it's hard for people to trust and do the things that they should do, because everything indicates otherwise, and when you do and you see the miraculous happen, then I feel like everything becomes a little bit easier. And so your faith stops being based on nothing, and it starts being based on the evidence that I've seen him move in the previous mountain and he's going to move in the next one, and so I believe that my faith has a lot of evidence in it. And I feel like some people's faith doesn't have any evidence, because to have evidence of your faith, you need to have jumped into the darkness and have seen the hand of God pick you out and not let you fall. And so I feel like when that happens over and over and over again, you know who you believe. And so it stops being about what you know about God, and it starts being who you know. You know this person, you have a relationship, and you're involved in a back and forth with this person that is Jesus and the Holy Spirit. So I definitely do believe that it's harder and harder nowadays because everything is so individual. We are so isolated, and the way for God to move really is in relationships. I feel His kingdom is based on relationships. He called us to make disciples. He called us to one another. Here is your mother, here is your son. And what He said to Mary, and obviously to His disciple John. So it's like, He gave us to each other. And I feel like sometimes it's so easy in this isolated world to stop seeing God through the hands and feet that is each other, because we don't have, or we lack the perfect faith to know that even in the struggle, He will sustain, and that we don't walk and camp in the valley of shadow and death, but we walk through the valley of shadow and death, and we don't fear because He's been good and He will be good, and He is there with us, and He won't leave us or forsake us. And I think that that is key, because lately I've been thinking about the church, and I've been thinking about why people don't want to go to church. And it's hard because God, this invisible God that we believe in, cannot hug me. But if I go to church, my brother can hug me, my sister can hug me. It's like they can hear me, and I can see their response to my tears, and I can hold their hand, and they can hold my hand physically. And I feel like that sometimes is not them holding my hand, it's God. And if people were able to understand in this individualistic, isolated world that we were put in each other's lives to be for each other, then I feel like Christianity would not have the bad name that it has, and Jesus followers could continue following Jesus more adequately. But it's hard because the world is isolating us. Everything about consumerism is isolation, is comparison, it's competition, it's me against you, it's me versus them, or us versus them. And that's definitely not the essence of the gospel. And even though there is a sort of way that you can see the narrative as us against them, it really never was. Because if the times are growing a little bit longer, is because none shall be lost, and He doesn't want any to be lost. So I feel like it's less us against them and more us in this together, trying our best. But when we do, obviously, when we all fall short, obviously, but it does become a little bit harder, and it becomes definitely almost impossible to showcase the person of Jesus to anyone else that's looking into our lives, and we become hypocrites quickly. So
So, of course, if you're familiar with the three Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Islam, and our own Christianity, I think you can decode that the central element that makes up Judaism is law. So,
yeah.
Moses and the Ten Commandments and that. For Islam, it is devotion. The word translates to English as submission, and of course, devout Muslims pray 5 times a day to show their utmost devotion to God, or Allah as they call it. But I think the central essence of Christianity is love. So it's not just God loves, or love is a part of God. Love is the essence of God. God is love.
Mm-hmm.
So I think to share my personal tale a bit, I was not born a Christian. I became one just last year. I was
Oh, wow.
baptized in the Catholic Church. Um, I think my way back to God, as I call it, stems from the fact that I was strayed from His path because I didn't believe that God loves me.
Mm-hmm. That's
I'm
where it all starts.
I live a pretty tough life, and I had many misfortunes happen to me. But I've come to discover that in those dark periods, there are these certain moments where a person shows that they care about me and that they love me.
Yeah.
And of course, I show them care and love right back.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that I believe I am. It is the presence of God right there in the love that I receive and in the love that I send back.
Mm.
So I wonder if you have the same conception.
Yeah, I definitely believe it's love. But I would add that it's love and obedience.
Mhm.
And obedience because of love and not because of law. And I feel like that's the major difference between perhaps Christianity and both other religions that you mentioned, like Judaism and Islam. I feel like the obedience comes from the love. You know, we love because he first loved us. And I feel like that's where it all really starts. I mean, when I encountered God and I encountered his love first, his love for me blew me away. Like his love for me blew me away. And so because of this love, now I just wanted to do what was right. And I was raised a Christian when I was a little girl. And it just for me, it just felt like you have to do what's right. Otherwise, just judge God is going
Mhm.
to send you to hell. You know, this is the way that I conceptualized it as a little girl. You know, it's like, oh, God is a judge and you better not get out of line with him. But it's like when you understand the love of God and his love becomes real in your life, then all of a sudden, now all that you can do to respond to this love, the only thing you can do is to try to please him and obey him. And if he says go that way, I'm going to go that way. Why? Because you loved me. Not because I have to, not because I'm going to go that way, not because I'm going to, but because you love me. So I want to be with you, you know? And so if you're there and you're guiding me there and I'm going to find you there, I'm going to walk there, you know? And if you're going to be over there, you know, and I'm going to find you there and the love that you have for me is going to be there, then I'm going to go there, you know? And so I feel like love and obedience are the key, and not love and obedience that comes from love and love, you
Mhm.
know, in that direct order, you know, love and the obedience that comes from and is birthed in love. That is probably the essence and the key, and probably the biggest difference, you know, that there is someone to hold you, and that the big God became so very small so that he could be involved in your everyday life, so that he can be involved in the very little things that bother you, whether you can have a bad hair day or you don't know what to wear, or he is there and present in the smallest things so that you can come, you know, because that's another misconception that I had when I was younger, you know, like, oh, you know, you got to pray about the really big important things because those are the ones that God cares about, you know, who you're going to marry, what house you're going to buy, you know, where you're going to live, like what country you're going to choose to. It's like, and I used to think like those were big things. But then I started thinking, wow, the God that split the sea, the God that can raise the dry bones and give flesh to them again, the God that breathed galaxies, well, these things are not really all that big for this God, are they? So that means that my choice of clothes is all not all that outside of the scope of who God is, because he himself chose out of love to become close and to dwell within this human body, you know? And so that's precious and it's beautiful. And that is the love of God, you know, the fact that this big God really did become small for us. You know, I was in this conference one day and I was in the middle of they were worshiping or whatnot. And I was just stuck to the floor, if I could just say this little experience. I know it may just sound a little wild, but I was stuck to the floor. I couldn't get up. And probably sat there. I mean, everything finished. The conference finished. It was a conference. It was 3 days, but the segment finished. Everyone left the conference room to get for lunch or whatever. And I was still there until the next session started. It was about a 2 hour break, and I was still there. So I was like stuck to the floor, and all I could see was like a big white sheet that just like went like this. And it was not invisible, but it was sort of white, and I can kind of see something. And then it started like kind of zooming in. So I felt myself like kind of traveling, like zooming into something. So everything started becoming like bigger and then bigger and then bigger. And then all of a sudden there was the galaxies. And then all of a sudden zoom in and zoom in and zoom in. And there was the Milky Way, you know, and that was us, you know, and zoom in and zoom in and zoom in and zoom in. And there is our solar system. And then zoom in and zoom in. And then there is the Earth. And then zoom in and zoom in and zoom in and zoom in to the very, when I thought that the zoom in will stop, it just kept zooming in until the last particle. And I thought, what was that? You know? And I just kept hearing in my heart, the bigger the camera, the smaller the pixel. What happens in a big camera? A camera that's perfect. The more that you zoom in, you can keep zooming in. The pixel will be the smallest, small. I think like a little bad camera, like the original cameras on your phones, you know, the first phones that actually had camera, what would happen? You would zoom in slightly and there was like a pixel for your like your eye and a pixel for your eyebrow and a pixel. It was big pixels, right? Because the camera wasn't very good, which means that if the camera is not very good, the pixel is really big. But if the camera is really good, the pixel is the tiniest thing that you could possibly think. And I thought, wow, because you're a big God. Like if you were less big of a God, if you were less awesome in power, if you were less almighty, if you were less than the God, you would have come in all your splendor and just this is me, and the world would know. But it's because he is that big. It's because he wanted to be involved in the details of my life. Because he's so big that he was allowed or permitted to come to the smallest dimension and be born as a couple of molecules inside Mary's womb. It's because he is great that he became small. It's because he is great that he cares about us. Because if you look at an important businessman, this businessman may not care that I have an issue because he's important and he's dealing his thing. But how good is God that he was an important man on this earth? He came to save the whole world and he said, let the children come to me. And he didn't shy away from any of the issues. That is a big man right there. That's a big, big man right there, because it's hard, because I try to do that and it's hard to care. It's hard, but his love is so big, so expansive. He is so expansive in his nature and who he is that it only speaks of his greatness, the fact that he would care about the smallest of things about our lives. And nothing about our lives is too small for him or too big for him. So when we get the right dimension of who he is and, you know, how he interacts with the human being, I feel like his love is even more tangible, because in areas where you would think, no way that's God. No way he's interacting. No way he just sent that truck that said love over there because I was feeling like I needed love. No way that he told someone to send me this random text from this person that I don't know so that I could feel loved. No way that it's like we discard all of the ways in which God is trying to show us, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you, because we don't believe that this big God could be as small as to get involved in our tiny little lives and show us just how much he cares. And that's why people don't believe, because they haven't experienced the love of God, because they don't believe that a big God can become that small. So I agree.
Well, it's amazing to talk to like someone who's like a visual thinker like yourself. I certainly lack that ability. My playground is language and idea, so it's
Right.
really awesome. So thank you
Right.
for sharing that. As you were, I guess, as I was hearing your answer, I was thinking about the conception of freedom that we modern people have today.
Mhm.
Basically, there are two, right? There's the liberal conception of freedom, i.e., you have individual rights, and that is the job of a government is to protect us. And
Mhm.
these rights include, the things that we do in our private time. So if someone who takes that to an extreme, like libertarian degree, it means that you're free to inject harmful substances into you, and of course you have free to have like a libertinian conception of sex, as long as everyone is a consenting party. And of
Yes.
course there's also the I guess like what I would call existentialist conception of freedom that is shared by these French thinkers, Jean-Paul Sartre or Simone de Beauvoir, who believes that the liberal conception of freedom doesn't go far enough. You need to be free from every pre-existing norms and traditions. Um, Even that's why people like Simone de Beauvoir is the one who planted the seed for the idea that gender is a social construct, for example. So she wants us to be free of the notion of males and females, and hence all the craziness regarding trans people these days.
Mhm.
But those two conceptions of freedom are far from what God intends our freedom to be. Right? God gives us our free will, but the purpose in which we are to use our free will is to align our conception of self to the version of yourself that God intends for us. So,
Yeah.
for example, I guess God gives you the great ability to be a visual artist, and I guess your purpose is to fulfill His intention of being a creative person, an apostle of beauty, or such, and yeah, and such. So yeah, tell me about how I guess your notions of freedom changed since becoming a Christian, I suppose.
Okay. Um, First of all, I'm an Enneagram 8. I don't know if you know anything about Enneagram, but I'm an Enneagram 8, which means, my basic fear is to be controlled, and my basic desire is to be free, if you will.
Yeah.
As a person, I've always been very rebellious about any kind of authority, be it my parents, the police, like whoever, in my youth, in my teen years, in my young adult life, very much so. But I would like to say that, so that's my nature, just my nature is that, but that's obviously not to say that I believe that the freedom that we have in God is to be slaves of righteousness. And it's freedom, even though it has the word slave in it, because you choose. And it's a hard thing to choose. And it's a ballsy thing to choose, you know? To give control of your life to someone else is the freest thing that you potentially could ever do. And you have to find the only person that is worth that amount of control, that amount of power over you. Only someone that's completely worthy of that amount of power is worth you giving it to them. And so I feel like to find a God that is that good, that you can use your own freedom to say, I relinquish all control, when really that is the concept of Satanism. That is the concept of the world today. Do what thou shalt, do whatever you want. Be the God, be in control, and don't relinquish control at any point to anyone other than yourself to do whatever it is that you want to do. So I feel like when we as Christians have this concept, I feel like we are the real rebels of the world. We are relinquishing control when no one else appears to be able to, because we have the Holy Spirit that enables us. And so I feel like my sense of freedom really changed from not being able to submit to any human being to submitting to God. And I think that has created in me the biggest of changes, really. And I feel like it's very much like, a cell. I'm going to explain it like this. Christians that don't understand grace are outside of the big cell, if you will, the jail that is the world and the profanity and the sin and the chaos. We have disintegrated into chaos as a society, and the values that we have as a society stand in chaos, constantly in chaos with each other. However, within the chaos, and let's just to continue with the visuals, let's place the chaos as a jail. There's a big jail, and there's a big cell, and all of the people that have descended into chaos are in that cell. Okay. And we Christians have received the key. We have come out of the jail, and we are now walking outside in the free world. But people inside that jail are very much moving around a cell like they wanted to be in that cell. So they, to us, appear to be free. Oh, they're free because look, they're walking about, and they're walking about like they want to be in that little corner where they are right now. Look, they're by that tree, and it looks like they want to be by that tree, even though the tree is part of the jail that they are in. And us as Christians, when we don't understand grace and the freedom that we have in God and the authority that we have in the name of Jesus, and we don't use that to actually move forward in authority and power within our own lives, then I feel like that freedom is us chained to the ground. So we're chained to the ground in the free world. So we are free, but we are chained to the ground by the laws and the structures and the lack of understanding of a loving God. So now I'm free, but I'm chained to the ground, and I'm not even actually chained because I got the key in my hand. I just choose to look like I'm. So then everyone on the inside of the jail is looking out at the Christians and saying, wait a second. You're saying that we're not the free ones, but you're the one that's chained to the ground that hasn't moved in like 20 years and that just goes to church and comes out and goes home and lives with no success and lives a mediocre type of Christianity that has no benefits. And I feel like that is why David said, let my soul praise the Lord and let it not forget all of its benefits. Because if we live the true life in God that we should be living, we would experience the benefits and we wouldn't be chained to the floor doing nothing. And the world would want to be like us because there would be something beautiful for them to behold. There would be fruit in our lives. If we're an apple tree, we'll be full of apples. And that is very, very nice thing to do. To look, to see, to grab an apple, to eat an apple, to be filled because you have now eaten, to take some shade under a tree because it's nice and full and grown. People can engage in the fruit of our life. People can desire a life that has fruit. But when a life has no fruit, it's a withered tree. So people out in the world, back to the cell metaphor, they're inside the cell, but they're acting like they're free. And here they are, the Christians, just standing outside, using their freedom to just be stuck to the laws that they think that they have without thinking about the fact that it's actually because of the love of God that you get to follow the law. You cannot in your own nature do it. So it's like when you lean in on the love of God and he enables you to be able to do what's right when it's impossible in your flesh to do so, then you are free. Then you are moving around the cell. Then you are showing them who's free now. And then the world can look back and say, oh, actually, they're the real free ones. But until Christians don't actually get up and start walking in the authority that we have, well, guess what? The world is still going to be thinking that they're the free ones. So in regards to freedom and not freedom, it's a tricky one because the vocabulary that we nowadays have to describe what is to be a free Christian sounds very enslaving, but it's really not. It's the freest thing that you can do to not be subject to sin and not let it master you.
Yeah. Let's see. So, I was thinking about how, how most young people, I guess people of my age group as well as yours, are turning away from the church. Is I think two key reasons would spawn that because as kids they will not relate the message that God is love, and rather God to them is associated with all the things that they cannot do or say. So for them it's like a very strict and demanding parent, so to speak. And
I understand that.
later in life they see that some of the biggest religious institutions that call themselves Christians, the Catholic Church being one, and recently the Southern Baptist Convention, I believe, they are mired with hypocrisies and gross scandals, things that, you and I would not imagine ourselves doing, let alone people that we know doing. But these are like people who are supposed to have authorities over our lives, and here we find them abusing their power, abusing the most vulnerable persons of our society, children. And so these two reasons make young people realize that, well, I don't need that. So how do you reconcile these two I guess obstacles?
I actually think that it is true that sometimes kids haven't been modeled the gospel for what it is, but I also feel the reality of the kairos of each individual person is also true, because there is a moment when no matter how well you were modeled the gospel, if it's not your moment, because like when Jesus said to the disciples, and who do you say I am? That's who they say I am. They think I'm Elijah. They think that I'm Moses. They may say whatever. Who do you say that I am? And Peter gets up with his magnificent declaration. He says, you are the Messiah. You are the Son of the living God. And what does Jesus say to him? He doesn't say, well, I've told you, so then that's fair enough. He said, no. Only my Father has revealed this to you. This has not come because I told you, because you heard it from the other disciples, because your faith kind of triggered back and forth, because you were modeled the love of Jesus. This was revealed to you. Your moment came and your eyes were open. That was your moment where your eyes were open. And I feel like every individual in this life has their moment where they have the possibility for their eyes to be opened. Will they lean into it? I don't know. Some do, some don't. For some, it's easier if they were already modeled the gospel, because it means that when they have trouble, they'll know where they can go and find some relief to their trouble. They know where they can find a source of authority. They know where they can find a source of love. They know where they can find a source of acceptance. They know where they can find a source of redemption and restoration and hope and life and eternity. You know, it's like, if you have been modeled that by a person that truly believes that those things are so, it's a lot easier in your moment of trouble to know where you go. If you didn't know that, the Holy Spirit is all the same as powerful. So when your moment comes, believe you me, God in some way will have shown you his goodness, and it will be up to you whether you believe or not. But there will be a moment where God will show himself to you, and it will be up to you to decide to believe or not. But I definitely do believe that some people are being pushed away, and what is making it harder for them is to come back in the moment that they have an issue. But if the issue is big enough and their moment truly does come, they will see it, because the light doesn't hide from those who need it.
Mhm. Yeah, so going back to the notion of freedom, of course, the book of Exodus retells the story of how the Hebrews escaped
Mhm.
from Egypt.
Yeah.
And when they are granted freedom by the Lord, he grants them these 10 commandments, which
Yes.
if we think about it, they are almost impossible to abide by all the time. So we all fail one of them
Yeah.
one time or another. And I believe in the passage of Exodus, some of the, I guess, some of the disgruntled freemen asked Moses, like, we have a life in, under Pharaoh, like we live in like stable homes, and we have we are fed, like well fed, like 3 meals a day and such. And ever since we follow you, all we get is like long
Mhm.
hours of walking and pretty much abject poverty and such. So I guess is this what freedom is? So yeah, tell me about how your, I guess, faith in God, I guess, changed your view regarding like material things.
Well, that's just perspective, isn't it? I feel
Mhm,
like the love of God will bring perspective to people's lives, because yes, you were poor and you were walking a lot more than you would want to be walking, but you were also consuming miraculous bread that would just appear in the sand, because they were in a desert. So it's like, where would the manna be collected? You
mhm,
know, dew from heaven would come, or from the earth would come, because, and in the dew of the morning, they would collect a miracle, and they will see miracle upon miracle upon miracle. If you lose your sight from the miracle, you're obviously going to be upset at the things that you don't have. But if you keep your eyes on the fact that, wow, this is a miracle, that will give you perspective to move forward. So I feel like in a lot of moments, what we need is not what we want, because we don't know to ask for what we need, because we haven't been exposed to what we need, which I think is one of the beauties about following God. Because in regards to material things, or in regards to anything really that we would think that we want, um, when we haven't truly been exposed to what we need, or our soul hasn't been exposed to what we need, we wouldn't know to ask it. We wouldn't know to want it. But when you trust that God is a good God, and that he leads you through green pastures, and that he will restore your soul, you can trust confidently that this God will provide every single thing that you need. Not what you want, what you need. What you need will be at the table every single time, because that's who he is. He is Jehovah Jireh. He is the one that provides, he is El Shaddai, all sufficient. He is the one. So when we trust in this God and we have a relationship with this God, and like I said before, your faith starts being evidence based, very evidence based, in fact, because you've seen him do it before. And he will do it again, and he will do it again, and he will do it again. So I feel like we will lack nothing. Now, we will lack a lot of the things that we would want, but we will lack nothing that we need. And I think that that's a big difference between, you know, our perspective in this world that we see and we can touch, and his perspective on the spiritual realm that he sees all things in and that we sometimes get glimpses of. The difference is need and want. And, you know, we can lack a lot of the things that we want, like I said, but we'll never lack anything that we need. And I think that that's the key for any type of material want, desire, or need.
I see. Well, so final question. Going back to your artistic profession, which verse from the gospel or the Bible in general would you like to have tattooed on you?
I already have one tattooed on me.
Ah, there we go.
Proverbs 1:7. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge or
Mhm.
wisdom.
Awesome. Yeah. I think for me, if I ever get enough courage to get tattoos of my own, I'll go for the psalm that says, "The Lord is my shepherd; I shall not want." So
Yeah,
really
I quoted a little bit of it.
Mhm.
He will
Well,
walk you through green pastures and he will restore your soul.
mhm.
Come on. You will walk through the shadow of death and you will not fear because he's with you. And I feel like that's true for all of us. And it's definitely part of everyone's journey. So it's definitely a good song that you picked.
Mhm. Well, with that said, thank you very much, Daniela,
Thank you.
for joining the show.
How is your name pronounced again?
Chung.
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 Chung. It was lovely to speak to you.
Yes, likewise. It was great meeting you too. Take care and God bless.
Let's take care. Bye bye.